This week had five lessons that I think all are quite important. So I didn't break it down to three. I did five. Starting with creating small steps and finishing your steps at the end of the day. What happened was that I was developing a feature and then issues came. So it didn't work as I expected. And then it was time for me to go to the gym and also call in person along the way. And so I didn't have enough time to get logs from it, understand the problem, what went wrong. And then I went to gym. I had the call. It was a great call. No issues in that. And in the evening, I started to naturally think like, oh, what could have went wrong, and I didn't have enough information. So I sort of started stressing about it, which was extremely stupid and a huge mistake. And I was like thinking like how to solve it, and I couldn't sleep. That was the outcome. And why did it happen? Is the first one is like it happened because I was trying to achieve too much in too little time, and that made me overwhelmed. And the lesson from this is that you must break it down to small, attainable steps that are realistic and specific. Plus, don't test bugs at the end of the day if you don't have enough time to get the required information about the bug. So there's two lessons there. And it also continues. So set big goals, but create small and attainable goals that you can achieve. Then make sure you have the steps for those small goals specifically written down, and do it even more specifically if you're not specific enough. So try to improve the specificness of that. The steps are for this improvement is that break your tasks into manageable chunks. Add all the hard stuff to the morning and enough time. Keep it simple. Do it in the morning if it's hard. The first thing you do in the day. And then at the end of your day, do only simple, smart things, and don't test bugs in the end of your day. First one. The second one is, if you want to remember it, you have to revisit later. So repetition creates learning and remembering. So I'm working in an industry, and I have not written down specifically the learnings from the past 6 months. And I noticed that almost everything I learned during the 6 months, the less important details, I don't remember them. And so now it didn't go to waste, but it was not the best use of my time to not write those things down. So now I suffer because I didn't take the time and sort of suffer during the time to really take the time and write it down. So now I suffer really, and I have to do it again anyways. So there's only one way to it. So writing it down, revisiting it, and if you don't do it, you have to do it, and that's the only way you can get it. And it's so funny, and it sounds so stupid when I say it like this, but that's the reality. So there's a human bias that makes us think that, oh, I remember it now, so I'll remember it also in the future. But you don't. No, you don't. If you don't revisit, if you don't need it, you'll forget it for sure. Okay? So you have to revisit it, write it down, revisit it frequently. And then only you can remember it. And you will forget it once you don't need it anymore. So when you still have to remember it, then you have to write it down. And why is that? It's because humans forget fast in a linear way when the things are not recalled / revisited, and this forgetting is so unnoticeable that we are unable to notice it most of the time ourselves. And this creates the illusion of remembering when you really forget nearly everything. The lesson is, it's about how fast and well you can learn, and to do what you have to do what you have to do. Okay, it's about how fast and well you can learn to do what you have to do. Write it down if you need to remember it. If you really think that this thing you didn't have to remember, do not write it down. But if you think you have to remember this later, you'll need this information later, write it down and revisit it. That is the lesson. Write it. If you need to remember it, write it down and revisit it. This is like a principle that you use. The steps are, do a learning log about your customer to provide the best solution in the world. So you want to learn as much as possible about your customer so you can provide them the best solution in the world. And then 2, when you learn something, write it down immediately to a learning log. If you want to remember it. If you don't want to remember it, if you think it's unnecessary information, do not write it down. If you want to remember it, write it down right away. Okay? And in the evening, you visit the learnings and you fill in what happened, what is the lesson, what are the steps for improvement. And if it's customer-based learning, you want to add that to a different log system, what you will revisit at the end of each week, and you will summarize it and specify the learnings even more. Reflection time. Moving to the third lesson of this week. We have optimize your dopamine. This is also so important. It's so funny that I think that, briefly, it's so funny that I think that, oh yeah, I like the learnings, I don't know if I want to do the reflecting. But now when I do it, I notice how important this is. Like, if I wouldn't do this, I would suffer forever with this stuff, right? So, third one is optimize your dopamine. So what happened was that I worked so much for many, many weeks, and then I noticed that I slowly started to lose the edge, falling over the edge of myself. I did too much, I didn't have enough energy to do it, the candle was burning from the both ends, and there I was. And I started to do worse habits, like watching YouTube shorts, eating poorly, not doing enough reflection, for example. All these things starts to happen slowly and subtly that it's hard to even notice when they happen. And this happened because I did too much compared to my available energy levels, and I didn't get enough rest for doing what I was trying to do. Why is that? It's, if you're tired and overwhelmed, you still crave the dopamine. You still crave the dopamine hit. And because you're so overstimulated, your brain is so foggy and you're overwhelmed, you feel bad, then the normal amount of dopamine, which comes from reflection, doing the work that you have to do, eating normal food, nothing special, the normal amount, the dopamine that comes from those stuff is not enough anymore. Okay? So then you need more, right? So that's why you start to watch shorts, eat unhealthy, do bad habits, and this makes you do stuff that is not serving you, because you need more dopamine to feel the same level of good. Dopamine makes you feel good. That you will get with less in normal state. Okay. The lesson from this is optimize your energy levels so you don't need to do much to get the dopamine that you require. And can do the things that really matter by this by sleep. Let's simplify this a little bit right now. Optimize your energy levels so that the normal level of dopamine you get from your work, exercising, sports, good food, good habits, sleeping well. Optimize your energy levels so that dopamine is enough for you to sustain a productive life. This is huge. I think this is huge. This could change someone's life totally. The steps are: keep track of your energy levels so you don't. Oh, sorry. Watching the wrong line. Okay. Keep track of your dopamine levels, your energy levels. Sorry. Keep track of your energy levels and notice when you start to do habits that are not serving you. That's where you take notes. Oh, starting to do that. Why is that? It's because I feel worse and I need some dopamine. Okay? And when you notice the bad habits, then you have to take a step back, optimize your sleep and environment for recovery and less distractions, less stimulation. Okay? That's what you do. And then the last one is I make this step simple. If you feel overwhelmed, then take more rest and do less. If you feel overwhelmed, take more rest and do less. Very simple. Making it simple. The fourth one. Oh, yeah, this is also huge. Keep the execution simple and stick to the plan. I remember one moment where I was writing software and there was a specific moment where I was like, I realized that, oh, I maybe should add this feature. And this one function. And then I stopped myself. I was like, do I really need that? And I was like, no, I don't need it. And then I didn't add it. If I would have added it, it would take like 10 minutes more maybe. I didn't add it. And later in the evening, I reflect back to this. I don't even remember what that thing was. What the extra condition, function, whatever it was. So it was not important at all. And I noticed that this happens to me very often where I'm like, oh, I'm executing thing. And then I'm like, whew, maybe I should do this. And then I make it more complicated. So why is that? Simple is hard. And it's hard to notice valuable functions at the moment of execution from the less valuable. So you're not able to see from the whole picture. Like, is it really required when you're at the execution mode? That's like different kind of energy going there. And the lesson is that if you get an idea of a function, condition, whatever it is, that is not non-must function, don't ever add it. Don't ever change your execution plan, okay? If it's non-must, it doesn't have to be done, okay? If you feel extremely tempted, still, but you can achieve your goal without it, right? Then you can write it down for later. And most likely, just write it down, leave it there. You can review it later, but you will never need it, okay? And the steps are, don't change the execution plan in the middle of it. Simple principle. 2. If the idea that comes to you in the middle of the execution is non-must, never, ever add it. If you still feel tempted that you should add it, then at maximum, just write it down for later. Moving to the last lesson, which is also huge, is that I hired a person who was pathological liar. In our first meeting, I had a weird feeling in my gut, like something was wrong, you know? I didn't listen it, and I just continued the hiring process. Over a few meetings, the feeling in the gut got even stronger, and that I should not hire them. I still did. Because here comes the mistake. Because I felt that I don't have no option. I was about to do a plan, and then that plan messed up, and then I was like, oh, I have to do something, and then I did this, and there I go. There I went wrong. So then at some point, after hiring them, I started noticing that, something doesn't make sense. And like what he was telling me didn't make sense. And I was like, what? Is he like telling the 100% truth or not? Like, what is this? And I noticed when he told me X and then suddenly it was Y. Like, what happened without further explanation? These things, I started noticing these small things. And then I made him explain in more detail the things. And then I definitely did notice that, oh yeah, that doesn't make any fucking sense. So eventually all the balls collapsed, and I realized that that person probably lied about 30% of everything he said, which is very sad, and it's very it's very not nice. So why did this happen? I made a bad decision when I felt trapped, when I felt that I had no other option, when I really had. And by having less options, and I didn't listen to my gut, that's where I went wrong. I had this perceived lack of options, and then I just did something, and that was wrong. There's two lessons here. First one is, if your gut says no, listen to it and never do against it. It knows better. If your gut says no, never do against it. It knows better. Then the second lesson is, spot a liar from X's stories that have no logical pattern. It just doesn't make sense, you know. And ask an extreme detailed questions to make them tell more about it and make it harder to lie if they're lying, and easier to make mistakes. Okay. And there's two steps now. The first one is, if your gut says X, then do X and never stop listening to it. I can think so many moments where my gut said X and I did Y, and that was a bad, huge mistake. But I cannot think moments where my gut said that don't do it, and I didn't do it, and that was a mistake. I can't think any of those moments. Okay, then the last steps are like, when you hear stories with excess details and it just doesn't make sense from someone, start to ask more detailed questions about it to make the lying harder, and ask those questions fast and until you notice inconsistency. Take notes on the things that they told you that didn't make sense, and then ask the details again later when they probably forget already their lies. So there will be some small detail that next time they lie will be something else. That is my hypothesis right now. So then take notes of the patterns of dishonest person and add those to your learning logs. So you want to later you want to understand what are the patterns here, what happens here that makes you notice that this person is dishonest, and then you want to take those lessons and use them.